Welcome back to Life is Stupid. There you go.
It's just reusing one of them now.
Well, you stifled my creativity.
Does Life's a bitch count? Like it's free words.
Yeah, sure.
Not
Well,
quite like the title.
fine. Life's bitchy. There you go. Life
Life's
is
a
bitch.
bitch.
No,
2 words.
yeah. Sure is one fits better because it has the free words.
I know, Max.
Anyway, the point is now we're going to do the sacrifice Chloe ending. Okay, so
Yay.
I want to talk about these endings because there was one thing that me and Joe didn't bring up last part. Okay, so in the previous ending, we sacrificed the entirety of Arcadia Bay, meaning all that interaction, all those subplots, all those choices we've been making with all the NPCs of Arcadia Bay, basically completely, destroyed. Oh, and there you go.
Oh, that kiss was terribly animated, but yes, heartwarming and all that.
Is it?
Crap.
Anyway.
Yeah.
No, not really.
I mean, it's better than David Cage's ones.
Yeah.
I get it.
Libs, that has got to be one of the lowest bars to clear.
Well, they're both ranked.
Anyway, yeah. So yeah, like I said, in the Sacrifice Arcadia Bay, we basically destroy everything and blah 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 blah. Meaning all of that good stuff with Arcadia Bay, with all the NPCs like Dana and Taylor and Warren, all destroyed. And now,
Again, except for one other NPC, but you'll have to wait till see who that is.
we'll have to wait for 2 before we can talk about that, Jova. So yeah, the point.
And she loses the picture.
So yeah, in the Sacrifice Chloe ending, we go back to the very beginning of the game where, there you go, we took a photograph of this butterfly, and now Nathan is about to come in, followed by Chloe, and of course we all know that Nathan shoots Chloe. So this time, Max is going to choose not to intervene and, sacrifice Chloe for the greater good, like she should have done from the get-go, but whatever.
You know what's funny? This literally is saying that it was destiny for Chloe to die.
That's what I've been saying this entire time.
Well, pretty much, Joe, but that's why a lot of people like to make the God's plan joke. But anyway, yeah, here's the big problem with the ending of Life is Strange, and a lot of people, even fans of... Go on.
I think we should wait until we properly see how stuff plays out. But,
No, not really. What I'm about to say has nothing to do with what's about to happen. So, yeah.
I'm talking about the bit
you
about,
check the perimeter, as my
what I've
step-ass would
mentioned
say.
before, if it's what I think it
Now,
is.
Let's talk business.
I'll wait a bit, if that helps you.
You got hella cash.
You don't know who the fuck I am or who you're messing around with.
Where'd you get that? What are you doing?
But there's a lot of, you can see a lot of YouTubers on their LPs, crying their tears out with this ending and all that stuff because, they love Chloe and all that shit. Yeah, hella more trouble, hella.
Ever even missed your punk ass, would they?
Get that gun away.
Yeah, that's the big issue. This is supposed to be, this moment is supposed to be a real tear-jerking, sad ending, and it, to me, it just falls completely flat on its ass because the very simple act of making us care about these characters failed miserably.
Okay, I know some people might say, but everyone in universe is sad. Well, to that I say, no duh, they're sad.
Of course they are.
Here's the thing, okay, they know the character more. Chloe is Max's friend, and Max does have family who do care about her, so of course they'd be sad, probably because they know her better and have a better attachment to her than us, the audience. Which is yeah, just because you show people being sad at this, obviously, doesn't mean that this is actually a character worth mourning for to the audience. And I'm sorry, their way of trying to make Chloe all good and all that stuff feels more like a flip. It feels more like a switch was flipped instead of an actual proper.
Now we change the timeline to how God originally planned it. Chloe dies in the bathroom. Nathan gets arrested, and there you go.
By David, no less. And as a result of this, Sean Prescott also gets overturned in this here and there.
Jefferson
gets caught.
Yeah, Mr. Jefferson gets caught.
Hey, you know what's funny? For as much as Chloe
and Max consoles Joyce and David, yeah, and I guess Max hugs her teddy. That teddy bear is a better friend than Chloe, Max. So you're better off. So yeah,
and But hey, look, Max confided in other friends as well.
All around me are familiar.
I'm actually surprised they didn't license out the song for this bit, considering how there's so much licensed music in this game.
You know, like, the other ending was just so much shorter than this.
Oh no, actually, sure, the ending is still going, actually.
No,
You know what
I
else?
said the other ending was so much shorter.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's the thing, Shiroi. I really get the feeling the developers see this as the canon ending because I mean, look at how much more work they put into it. I mean,
My guess is like, well, the reason that they consider this the canon ending is that it shows how noble Chloe was in the end for her sacrifice.
yeah.
Also, I just want to say this, for as much as Chloe said that the police were in the Prescott's pocket, we see several times that the police are willing to go against the Prescott, so what the heck?
Anyway, let me. Yeah. Now I can talk about this. Okay. Let's address the elephant in the room right now. Here's one of the big reasons why a lot of people, even some fans of the game, really dislike the end game of Life is Strange. Let's think about this for a moment. No, the Sacrifice Arcadia Bay, like I said, destroyed all of the NPCs we grew a connection with in Arcadia Bay because we destroyed the entire town. We killed everybody, right? The Sacrifice Chloe ending, on the other hand, literally pulls a Sonic 06 and retcons the entire game. Let's think about it this for a moment. We went back, as a result now, every single thing that we did throughout the game has now been retconned because remember, we resetted the timeline. So basically, what this game is telling me is that all those choices, all those interactions that I made throughout this game were just a waste of time because the game retcons all of them for just this one final binary choice.
And it gets even worse because, remember, the way the game is acted, it tends to play fast and loose with what apparently does stick, despite the past before that being changed and whatnot. So let's say for the sake of argument, some things did stick here and there. Well, the game's got an extra FU because, hey, remember if you wanted to ship Warren with Max? Yeah, in this timeline, they just opt to be friends, regardless of whatever you did.
Yeah, that's the big problem. Basically, your choices mean nothing because everything you've done in this game gets retconned. There you go, Shiroi. This acclaimed BAFTA/Game Award winning game took a page from Sonic Bloody 06.
You know what else I'm gonna say? Heavy Rain matters more with your choices than this.
How sad is that?
Outdone by David Cage.
How
and how much your
fucking
choices can matter.
sad is that?
Honestly, Jerva, considering David Cage got worse at the choices thing after that, is that really that much of an accomplishment?
Oh, okay, for as terrible as it
again,
is...
Managing to be worse than David Cage is an accomplishment, but regardless.
For as terrible, I was just talking about specifically the choices mattering aspect, not so much. I mean, the writing aspect, that's a whole nother topic altogether.
Pretty much.
Also, is it me or is Larry David? Larry David, what are you doing here?
It does look a lot like
Larry. For those of basically, Larry David is Seinfeld's co-creator, aka the original, the creator that the character of George is based on. Like,
I believe he's also.
I wasn't aware. So yeah, apparently Larry David is in Life is Strange.
Also known as that guy from Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Oh, even Frank's there to mourn the death of Chloe.
It's because it's basically implying that secretly he actually kind of likes her. So, liked, yeah.
It's very sad and all, but look, guys, the blue butterfly.
Yeah.
What, are they pulling a Patch Adams and implying that Chloe became the butterfly or something?
You still there, Shiro?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, well, do you have anything to comment on how this game is basically copying Sonic 06's retcon tactic at the end?
Well, Jover, it could be a lot worse.
Wait, no, that was Pedro who said it to him. Jeez, you're really...
Actually, it was me. It was me who said that. Actually, Dubs. I don't know what you're.
I don't know.
I was referring to Jover's point of Chloe becoming what was it?
A butterfly? What about that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's Jova. It could be a lot worse, Jova. She could end up being like the Jack Frost, where she goes back to life as a freaking snowman.
Okay.
I mean,
Go ahead.
random.
Go ahead, Shiri.
I mean, I'm not actually too bothered by this because, I mean, it's time travel. Like,
I get. Well, for me, it's a problem
if
because
you go back and you change this one thing, like, because you had to go way back to the beginning, of course, everything else is going to play out differently.
I get that.
I think I get Shiroi's logic here in the sense where, like, this is like Sonic 06 was not the only time travel that does that whole undoing the past retcons and stuff. So like
you don't get to
I'll
keep
just-
everything. Like, I understand,
But my problem is that you don't get to keep anything. All that stuff I've done with all the side characters now been retconned. It never happened, so it's meaningless. This game is entirely pointless when you get right down to
Also-
it.
Also, in terms of comping 06, let's not forget, most people considered it a good thing that 06 wiped itself out. Whereas
sure.
this one, people's frustration is more having to do with the gameplay and the fact that your choices really do not matter.
That is true, but when it comes to this game, from a storytelling perspective, so basically, imagine, okay, let's say for example that I was really genuinely super invested. Like, I like quite a bit of the NPCs, so it's not like I'm gonna lose sleep over this, but let's pretend for a moment in an hypothetical scenario where I'm genuinely super invested, right? I would be pissed off because, so basically what you're telling me is that all those friendships that I built up with Dana and Taylor and Warren and that never happened. You just robbed me of that experience basically by telling me that it didn't happen basically. And that's what I take issue with basically.
but how come, sorry, blech, but we don't know if Max would then, go on to make friends with them anyway, like during, this new timeline.
Oh, they
while
could.
were showing us all the photos. Like, she could have. Yeah, we don't get to see it, which sucks. They should have been clear about it. I absolutely will say that. But at the same time, we don't know. The game is handling this ending pretty. It's a mess still. There should be clarity about some things.
I understand your point.
I'd like to think that Max would learn from a lot of this stuff and just go and make connections anyway.
I understand
But
your point, Shiroi. But if I don't get to see it, it doesn't matter to me. If I can't see it for myself, I can't feel that. That's the problem.
No, that's fair.
Yeah, you can make an argument. Oh, maybe she goes indeed to go back and meet all those characters that you've met with. Maybe, but I don't know. It's a nice
They
thought.
should have showed you in the photos or something.
Yeah, that's the
They
problem.
kind of do show Max hooking up with, I think that girl is Taylor, Dana, or whatnot, but it's not clear. And again, to add some frustration to this, let's not forget, guys, we've seen in other times when we go to the past that some of the changes that we did do, even though those things should probably be changed by us altering the past beforehand, still apparently stick. So that just adds another layer of confusion. Okay, I'm not asking for some deep showing of how all your changes factored in, but the little bits that we actually do get don't really paint that good a picture. And like I said, apparently Max and Warren just stopped to be friends in the Sacrifice Chloe ending, so even if you were trying to ship Max with Warren, it doesn't matter. Heck, I'm pretty sure that the kiss with Chloe during episode 5 happens regardless of whether or not you were trying to romance Chloe or whatnot.
Yeah, but okay, how about my problem is, of course, the whole, okay, you want to make an argument, well, maybe she does indeed go back and redo all those friendships all over again. Well, yeah, that's a nice thought, but if I don't get to experience that, does it really, it's not to mention, how do you even know that's what the writers intended? It's speculation at that point. And it's
Here's pretty much my take on the situation. You could argue that she did make that change. However, it holds just as much water as the idea that nothing changed or that nothing stuck, because it is just that vague.
Yeah.
So honestly, the fact that people can pretty much legit come to the conclusion that that your choices didn't matter pretty much says enough about the game's narrative.
in fact, let me follow up on what Jova just said earlier. You mentioned Heavy Rain. How about this? Like, for as terrible as the Tripicum Human, and you guys know, I've already gone through 2 playthroughs on this channel explaining why the Tripicum Human is terrible. So that's not at all the point.
Oh yeah.
But one thing that game did get right was the choices aspect, because the ending of the Tripicum Human, as I've even demonstrated by showcasing the completely different endings you can get in the extra part on our run, the ending of the Tripicum Human is very dynamic. The ending can go in multiple different directions depending on your choices. Again, it's all shittily written, but you have to at the very least give credit to the dynamicness of the ending, at least, you know. Whereas this is literally just pick between 2 endings, and neither of those 2 endings are influenced by the choices you made before the final choice. Only the final choice matters when you get right down to it, you know?
Let me put it like this. You seem more of a matter of how your choices mattered in the flipping sequel to this game than the actual ending of said game. How messed up is that?
Don't get me wrong, this is still a don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to... Anyway, we'll get off to our thoughts in a moment, everybody. But since this ending was kind of only 60 minutes long, I decided to throw in something interesting. As you guys know, this year was released Life is Strange Remastered, remastered by Deck 9, the creators of Before the Storm and True Colors. Well, that's a nice thought, developers, but well, cool for the fans, I guess. Okay, so. I thought, since we still have time, and this part is still reasonably short by this point, why not take a look at the Life is Strange Remaster? I'm not going to play any bits of the Life is Strange... I'm going to say that for Before the Storm, because the Before the Storm Remaster has way funnier glitches. Let's take a look at some side-by-side comparisons of the original that we just completed and the Deck 9 Remaster. There you go. As you can see, Chloe's face was touched up to see if she has a bit more emotion to it and shit like that. Basically, they redid the entire facial animations from the ground up with facial mocap. Basically.
Even though those were some of the most critiqued parts of the game, that was probably a good call on there.
One thing I don't get is why do all the characters look like they have way more eye paint or whatever it's called?
I think it's because of the lighting differences.
I don't know, the way their eyes look. Yeah, and look at I don't really like the way Max's hair looks in the remaster, personally. I don't know.
What did they have to do? Did they have to mime the dialogue?
Okay, basically showing, if you can tell, on the left is the original, on the right is the remaster, basically.
And Kate, weirdly enough, looks uglier in the remaster.
Yeah, she does. Well, you'll see in a moment. Oh my god, Kate! What did they do to you? What the
I get that maybe the idea is to take the light from her eyes, but I feel like the left one does a better job showing off the trauma.
Yeah. See, look at Max's hair right here in these 2 shots. I actually think the painterly stylization of the original makes her hair look nice. In the original, though... in the remaster, though, I don't know. The more realistic hair texture doesn't look as good.
I will say this. I do think Chloe looks better in the remastered version.
Yeah. I will get...
Her eyes are staring into my soul.
Yeah, the problem is the eye animation can be a bit weird in the remaster, yeah.
Okay, I think the best way to describe this is like, well, you know how a lot of PS3 remasters of PS2 games were hit and miss in the looks department? This feels like pretty much kind of a modern version of that.
I think Max looks better overall in the original version, looking at this.
Same, yeah.
Go on, Jova.
It really is a mixed match with stuff that got better and stuff that got worse, which I do think speaks a bit to how the art style of the original game was as well.
Yeah. Again, remember, the original did its best to hide its limitations by, again, we can't make good hair texture. Okay, let's do it in a hand-painted way, so that it looks nice without necessarily looking high fidelity. Deck 9, on the other hand, Deck 9 is trying to swap it up with a more realistic hair texture. Okay, I will agree. Nathan's face looks better on the remaster here.
I was going to say, Nathan's looking less plastic here.
Okay, so I will say this about the remaster. For the most part, the NPCs get definite upgrades in their looks here. So, like, the NPCs or lesser important characters, they definitely, I would say, they across the board get an upgrade.
Also, the principal I don't know. Like I feel maybe it's the lighting. Maybe it's the lighting, but his skin color definitely darkened. I don't.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Maybe it's the lighting, but because this game is using the remaster is apparently using a new lighting engine.
The clock's frozen.
Okay, see, Max is weird in this game. Like, see, most people are consistent with whether or not they're better or worse. With Max, though, I feel like in some scenes she looks better, and in other scenes she looks worse in the remaster. It's weird. Oh, God.
Alright, that
original version looks creepy.
I will agree that in this one shot, that face looks better, but... So yeah, as you can see, the remaster is kind of a mixed bag. Some things are better, some things are worse. The clincher for me is that the Life is Strange remasters are glitchy, because apparently Deck 9 was rushed when it comes to remastering these. So it's usually a better way to just play the original, because it's more polished.
From what I hear, they apparently patched up the glitches.
They have been patching the glitches, yeah, but, you know, like... up until recent, I'm not even kidding you, sure. Up until like 4 days ago, the Before the Storm remaster has been completely broken with characters T-posing during cutscenes and shit like that, and they only patched that shit 5 months after release, basically.
Now, I will say I am glad that Deck 9 tried with these remasters. I'm gonna give Deck 9 some credit. I do feel like part of the reason that the remaster turned out to be kind of long.
Yeah, Nathan's facial animations look much better. Yeah, I will give that. Go on.
I do think part of the reason, in fact, a major reason why the remaster came out a bit wonky is because of, well, the original art style. Something about it feels kind of tough to touch up. Like, the original art style is made with the specific means to hide the fact that the game was not exactly the most highly budgeted, but it has a very specific niche to it, which is like, okay, so for the characters who weren't that important, and obviously had a more often lower fidelity kind of faces, this is overall a net gain for them. It's with the characters who did get more focus where suddenly trying to make more detailed versions of their faces fit while also maintaining the art style can be tricky. What do you think, Shireen Dwebs?
Yeah, some remastered bits look better, some remastered bits look worse. You know, this reminds me of specifically since they're both Square Enix IP.
What?
The remaster of 10, the Final Fantasy 10, I mean.
Oh yeah.
I thought that remaster overall looked better.
The remaster, for the most part, for the most part, is indeed better looking and however, there are some things that can be a bit. Go on.
The environments look better in 10 HD, whereas some of the character models are a bit off.
I can understand. However, I will give that game I will give Virtuous Studios some credit with that, because unlike with this game where where Deck 9 had the entire source code at their disposal, Yoshinori Kataise said in an interview that part of the original source code was lost because, remember, this was back when Square Enix, for whatever reason, wouldn't archive their shit, you know? So something happened with Kingdom Hearts 1 where they had to make an entire game from the ground up, according to Rumor, because the entire source code was lost. So apparently part of the original source code for 10 was lost, which is why some of the character models had to be redone. So I can understand why some character models ended up looking different. So I will at the very least cut Virtual Studios some slack there, because, you know, it was more part of the circumstances than actual incompetence on part of the developers, you know?
They had to make do with what they got.
Yeah, exactly, basically.
I mean, it's better in terms of remastering now. It's a bit better nowadays with the release of the PS4.
Here's the fun
versions and the like.
Here's the fun. Sorry.
Whereas on his original strictly PS3 release,
Frank looks about the same.
Some of them looked a bit off, and you couldn't even change the soundtrack.
But here's
I think Frank looks a bit better in the remaster version, if only because his hair gets a bit more texture.
Not big on Max's new face in this shot, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I feel like the original looks gets the point across better. Yeah, right now since the big selling point of these remasters were the new facial animations. I also got put up together from thank you Violet Tawi, who's a Life is Strange YouTuber. I'll put her channel in the description for everybody to check out.
5 years, you're still Max Coffee.
Basically, where she compares
We're best friends. I'm sorry.
the facial animations, yeah. Since remember, these were the selling points of the remaster, basically. About the
So what
whole.
do you think overall, Shiroi?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Oh, so what do you think overall, Shiroi?
There's no way we could
It's a mixed bag of a remaster.
Mm-hmm.
I do think Chloe looks better. Max looks off a lot of the time. In some shots she looks fine, but overall I prefer the old model. The NPCs definitely look a lot better. Like they look less stiff.
Sorry about
Yeah.
blocking you.
The budget.
Oh god, this is
that high, but-
so much better. Did you notice that with Victoria just now? That looks so much better in the remaster. I will, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think
Here's the fun fact about that. Since we're talking about the whole the whole Square Enix remasters whips. The Kingdom Hearts. Here's a fun fact: the HD remake of Kingdom Hearts 1 that's in the HD collections. They used the Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance Sora model for that because remember the original model source code was lost, so they had to use, because remember Dream Drop Distance has Sora's a recreation of Sora's Kingdom Hearts 1 model, so fortunately they could use that to replace the lost source code basically. So again, it's one of those cases where developers just had to do what they got basically.
Max's model is so inconsistent because she looks so much better in some scenes in the remaster, but like worse.
Yeah.
I
in the
know,
others.
right?
I don't know if it's a lighting issue, but yeah, like there's no consistency with Max.
All right, so that was
Whereas
all.
the others, I can like just say, yeah, this
No,
one's better, this one's worse, and yeah.
Hey, Sherry, that actually kind of sums up Max pretty well. There's no consistency with it.
So yeah, I will not be playing any bit of the remaster because I feel like this compilation that I put up together does a good job in showcasing what's up with this. That being said, don't be sure to tune in for the Storm play for everybody, where I will actually play a bit of the remaster because I still have archived my copy of a copy of Before the Master on PC remastered, but before the recent patch, meaning we can have a laugh at all those T poses. That should be fun. But we'll get to that. For now, it's time for final thoughts. Who wants to go first? Go ahead.
Go on, Dribs.
I'll list the positives first. The acting is solid for everybody, even Hannah Tell near the end.
Hannah Tell?
Max's actress.
Max's BA, and in spite of the character and dialogue she was saddled with, Ashley Birch did a very good job.
Mm-hmm.
The graphics, I do admire the graphical style that they're going for, and it does match with the game's tone really well. Basically, looking like a very highly detailed storybook. And some of the music is nice, and the idea of the story isn't bad. You're a character who's tried to fix all the problems of not just her friends but of other people.
I think you're talking about Max, not Victoria.
Yeah, Victoria's the bully character.
Well, but that kind of leads into my cons. Some of the citizens do kind of feel pretty similar to each other. Like some are just always all the bitch. Sometimes there's just always all the nice people. I did compliment the graphics, but by that I mean the environment. Some of the character models themselves a bit stiff, lack of a better term, especially in the facial expressions. I mean, some are good, others are just kind of lackluster.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the music isn't all that memorable, to be honest. The story, again, I appreciate what they were going for with the story, but the way it was executed wasn't that great. It mainly all just comes down to be honest, I think it comes down more to the characters than anything else. Like, Max is fine, she's just kind of there.
Despite being the main hero.
the other NPCs are mostly just kind of really one-dimensional up until at the very end. Like, oh, one's the dorky friend, the other one's the wretched piece of shit, the other one's the stern-faced principal who's like, amongst others. As for Chloe, who this story revolves around on a secondary basis. Okay, I don't think she's responsible for poisoning my water supply, burning my crops, and delivering a plague onto my house. But she's still not very good. like I mean, I'll take her over the supposed big adult guy, David. But Chloe still has her issues, namely her manipulativeness, for lack of a better term. But this is almost always aimed at Matt. I mean, there are occasions where it's aimed at other people as well.
Because Max is with her the most, yeah, it gets aimed at Max, her supposed best friend and lover.
In some routes.
Well, that's the thing. Regardless, you kind of always end up kissing Chloe by the end, which implies that they were really going for shipping the two.
However, the reason I don't think Chloe is worse than, say, David is because it's like I said, yeah, Chloe is kind of an adult at this point, but she's not as much of one or with as much responsibilities as David. Like I mean, at the end we find out his reasoning for being such a hard ass, but he's still a hard ass, and this communication of trying to allay potential fears of him were almost non-existent. Like for most of the game, I just saw a bastard stepfather. I just saw the generic bastard stepfather who hits his daughter.
And that's the thing. They only do that to make him a red herring. And like I said, there are a lot of cases where you won't even get that slap from him, so it really does make you wonder how committed they actually were to making him that bad a person outside of just being, again, a red herring. Because, it's basically the game trying to get you to think, ooh, he must be the bad guy, as opposed to really having anything really important to say on the matter.
I mean, that he's being a hard ass towards the other students, especially that poor girl who was like
Kate.
Yeah, Kate. Like seriously, I mean, in that context, to me, he just comes up as just randomly yelling at somebody.
Yeah,
it really does feel like that.
Yeah.
When we do get context, it's like, oh, I gotta blame somebody. This girl, because she's the closest.
Like, this is again the issue with David and the writing as a whole here. The game will go from making someone out to be an absolute piece of crap to then somebody with a redemption story. Now, granted, this kind of worked with Frank, but okay, when it comes to David, I will still take him over Chloe character-wise, but all the same, just because I find him better than Chloe does not mean I find him to be a good character. Like, he is literally written as the worst just to be a red herring, so when we know it's not him, now it's okay for him to start, reflecting on his actions. Granted, he might reflect on them if you side with him against Chloe in that ultimatum fight, if I recall correctly. But all the same, it is not the best shown, and to be fair, like I mentioned, even though his slap is something you can miss, him supposedly getting better as early as, chapter 3 or 4 is also something you can miss too, so not as consistently canon as his eventual, quote-unquote, redemption by the end.
Yeah, that's the problem when you write stories like this. You have to be really careful with characterization from path to path, otherwise you just end up with, David.
This is also part of why a lot of people hate Chloe the most, because a lot of characters, sometimes you gotta go a specific route to see their worst. Not with Chloe. You will always see her, you're guaranteed to see her at her worst, regardless of how you play the game here and there. Like, even if you side with her, she is still all about them heinous acts here and there. So
in terms,
yeah.
But in terms of not very good characters, I wouldn't say she's worse than say Vanille or any character from 8 not named Selfie. But she's still not high up there in the pantheon of characters from Square Enix.
That's a good question, Thurs, but I'll ask after you're done.
Is there anything I'm missing out potentially?
What do you think of the use of time travel? Because I find episode 5 basically just completely goes nonsensical with its. Remember, like I said about my rant about how tearing up that photograph should not somehow stop us from calling David because those two events are unrelated.
Well, I'll give it credit for one thing. It's better than 06 in terms of how consistent it is.
Well, congrats.
And I guess
I should elaborate before you guys interject. This game's time travel starts off solid enough, but then falls apart at the end. 06 is just a mess from the beginning.
Pretty much.
Also,
sure. To be fair to the scene about ripping up the photograph, while it doesn't necessarily stop Max from telling David, it does stop Max and David from having solid proof that the photograph would have brought to arrest the guys, so that's probably what changes in that regard.
Wait. Since when was her selfie, her prize-winning selfie, in any way proof of Jefferson's crimes? Wasn't because what we see in the scene is Max sending.
Allow me to explain. Her not submitting the selfie or even taking the selfie leads to the series of bouts that lead to her eventually suspecting and accusing Jefferson. Because let's not forget, technically, while this Max is from the future, as soon as she leaves and goes back to the future, the Max left in her place doesn't know about all the past stuff. So ripping up the selfie does not lead to her getting the info that leads to them suspecting or having the evidence on Jefferson to tell David. Think about it like this again. Imagine, per se, you go back in time, but you're just replacing the you of that time. So as soon as you go back to the future, the you of that time is back, but they pretty much don't know what you know. So they more or less play on, I guess, a bout of autopilot in regards to how the events went on when you were there, except now without all that difference again. And to your credit, the game does not explain this well.
No.
But yeah, that's me done. You're gonna ask me something, Pedro?
Okay, sure. Lips. I just thought of something considering you mentioned the characters from 8. So Shiro, who do you think is a more abusive love interest? Chloe or Renoa from Final Fantasy VIII, considering I remember you being really, really pissed off at Renoa. So
I don't know. Like, they're both shit for different reasons. Like,
honestly, it's easy for me to pick Chloe because Chloe is actually written like that. Renoa wasn't. That is admittedly a bit of a thing we came to because of how bad it was written, but that's not actually what it is in that regard.
Honestly, Joe, that kind of makes Renoa come off as worse because of like really, Renoa was not supposed to be written like an abusive.
Yeah, it does. While I do understand your point, Joe, but it does show tone deafness on part of the writers as well.
There's also the fact that was a bad localization as well.
Sure.
I mean, I guess a Joe, but with bad plots like 8, honestly, I don't think I can't blame the localization entirely.
All right, let's not. All right, let's not.
Given what we know, it was apparently drastically different, but regardless.
Sure,
that's my point.
Your thoughts?
You were saying?
Oh boy, what a mess.
Yeah.
This, okay. I think I've already gotten out a lot of what I wanted to say during the LP, so I'll kind of just keep it brief. The characters, Yeah, this game caused me a lot of grief. Like, some of the better characters, like, they don't get, they don't get a lot of the screen time they deserve. It all ends up being about Chloe, who is not a good character. She's just awful. Like, even David, he's a dickhead who needs to deal with his anger and paranoia, and also, hits his kids. But like I said, he seems like somebody who's actually willing to reflect and change, whereas with Chloe, she's just kind of like, oh, it's everyone else's fault but mine. And no. And, I've said it. It's like, the family's broken, and even Nathan's family is, fucked up, and it fucked him up. But, this isn't an excuse for the shit either of them have done. I think, Nathan's much worse than Chloe, yes, but they're still both terrible, and I can't like Chloe, at all. Even with the bit where they tried to get you to in the creepy art gallery, whatever it was, the nightmare sequence, I still don't, sorry.
I think I get what you mean about your comparison between Chloe and Nathan. Nathan is technically a worse person than Chloe, but Chloe is way more insufferable because the plot does not nearly call her out as much as it calls out Nathan.
Yeah,
and
they
even
really want us to like Chloe, and it's like, I'm sorry, I don't.
And even in the bout where Chloe sacrifices herself, she's played off as a noble martyr, someone who's willing to pretty much let her life go for Arcadia Bay now. Which kind of clashes with how she's been as a character beforehand. Maybe she finally realizes how much of a burden she was to Max. Too little too late.
Yeah, I do wish we could have seen... I wish, that we could have interacted more with the NPCs, have relationship routes, either platonic or romantic. It was we made a lot of comparisons to this game, but it's kind of fitting again. But Persona also does that a lot better, How
Undertale does this better?
I feel like Persona's more of an apt comparison because of the kind of game this is.
Fair enough, yeah. The game where you're playing as a kid in high school and all that.
Well, also the way they could approach relationships with it, I just feel like it was a better comparison, but I do get what
fair
you're
enough
saying. Oh god, what else? The time travel is convoluted, and I know time travel is kind of pretty easy to mess up, but the game did not do a very good job at explaining why Max couldn't time travel back in certain areas, like the suicide scene. And I know we kind of came up with our own reasons for why that might be, but the game really should have done a better job of relaying it.
What's the thing? Shiroi? There's an entire basically, Shiroi, don't worry, this doesn't spoil anything. Basically, Shiroi, what's interesting? They should have done something akin to what Neo the World's Review does, because basically, Shiroi, one of the characters in that game has the ability to time travel once per day, but only once per day. And every time the character starts hopping between various points in the timeline, much like what Max does at the final episode of this game, thing is, the game always makes sure to always meticulously, slowly, but clearly explain where we are, why are we here, and what exactly are we trying to change, and what might change as a result of said change. So that game really goes out of its way to make sure it lays all of its cards on the table, so that basically whereas this game. Yeah, this game basically just asks you to just go along with things, and the game doesn't really try to explain things properly, and that's the problem that I have.
Mm-hmm.
Go on.
Anything else, Shiroi?
It was good to see this, after all the hype has died down around it, because, I don't understand where it really came from, to be honest. And I know we mentioned the LGBT stuff, but you know, even putting that aside, and I'll comment on that in a second because I know like you guys kind of wanted my opinion on that. Even with that aside, it's like I don't get the appeal here, and I'm somebody who does enjoy a lot of story heavy stuff, but like and not RPGs. Like I just mean sort of the visual novel kind of, just almost pure story kind of thing, which is what this leans into.
Sorry.
But as for the sorry, I'll let you go in a second, Joa. As for the LGBT stuff, it's whatever. Like they just treat it as is. You know, it's like, you know, you can choose to be with Warren or you can choose to be with Chloe, except the game really wants you to pick a specific one, but, you know, whatever. But
like,
yeah,
seriously, I think even Monica was more subtle about being with her than this game is.
That's kind of sad. Anyway, I think that's about it. Oh yeah, and again, like this game just handling a lot of topics that it really is not qualified to. I've ranted about enough of this stuff in the LP itself. So if you've come this far, A, congratulations. B, you probably get the general gist of how I feel about this game. So I think that's about it. But you wanted to say something, Jova?
The general takeaway I can get for this game's popularity back in the day are several things. One, like I've mentioned, LGBT representation in gaming was not eating nearly as good as it is now. And that's not to say that it's exactly getting a banquet nowadays, but the bar has definitely been raised quite a bit. So in terms of getting a non-stereotypical gay relationship, I guess people consider this to be raising the bar. And also, again, this was a game that spoke to a lot of people because, weirdly enough, there weren't a lot of games that allowed you to play as teenagers in high school. Or at the very least have, well, okay, to be fair, technically college, but... Wait, no, actually, I think this is still high school.
Honestly, to me, it just comes across as, oh, this was before Persona 5 made the series super popular like it is right now. So now that we have Persona, now people can just move on from this, to be honest with you.
I don't want to act like Persona 5 was the only thing that really ramped it up, but yeah, no, Persona 5 was definitely probably the codifier for more games of this variant here and there. Or games that were relatively down to earth while obviously having a supernatural twist on it.
I mentioned this in part 2 when you said that, Jova. Honestly, to me, it just comes when it comes to that whole original 2015 reaction about there weren't that many games like this. Those people needed to play more visual novels because this kind of shit was all over visual novels way before this game came out. I don't know. It's just like... Well,
to be fair, I guess, you know, if you weren't into visual novels, you know...
I guess.
I could get that here and there. Like, and even still, visual novels, like... Visual novels are definitely a different genre from what this sort of game was. And also, there is the fact that it was very affordable for the youngsters and the teens as well. So, I would say that this game had quite a few factors in its favor. Those factors have definitely gone away, though, given, again, the reception to Life is Strange Before the Storm, and even people coming back to this game, more or less say, like, even if they can't bring themselves to hate it, most have come to realize that it's not exactly the golden treasure that they were, you know, hyping it up to be. And you know what? I will not bring fault onto them for being hyped about this game back in the day. It's like with Mighty Number 9. It was just the perfect storm, no pun intended.
Okay, carry on, Jova. Final thoughts, please.
No, that's basically it for
No, actually, I thought I was talking to Jova. And you already said that you were done.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize. So, yeah, sorry, go on.
It's okay. What can I say that hasn't been said about this game by people who loved it but now dislike it, or even people who liked it but realized the problems with it? Like, oh boy. I won't start with the obvious point because I'll save her for later, but yeah, let's talk about the wasted potential in this game. It is immensely annoying the amount of potential that the game practically teases you with. Like, all of these characters or stories that you could be pursuing But nah, you gotta focus on the blue-haired girl, who is quite honestly one of the worst characters I've ever seen in a bout of entertainment here and there. Now, I'm not gonna act like she's the absolute worst, but when it comes to characters that we're supposed to like, oh boy. Again, we're introduced to her taking up 2 bouts of a parking space meant for handicapped people, who she later steals money from. But again, like I said, saving her for later. No, there's a lot of potential. Like, we could look more into Alyssa's deal, and honestly, sadly, for as much of a side comedic thing it was, I felt more fulfillment for her than I ever did involving the blue-haired one. Frank goes from being an absolute dick to someone who does seem to be amicable, at least. He's definitely regretful of how his drug dealing might have played a part in Rachel's murder. And yes, controversial as it may be, I too like David more than Chloe. Like, again, mind you, that does not make David a good person or even a good character. But there is potential in his bout here and there. Like, maybe we could see just how much his PTSD has truly affected his psyche. Like, he means well, maybe we can try and help him see better. Which we apparently did do, but we saw so little of his development that when he finally does change, it doesn't feel as fulfilling as it could have felt. Meanwhile, there's perfectly fine characters like Warren or Joyce who... they're good, but we don't get to spend as much interaction with them as I was like. Now, then there's Kate, who, well, apparently the developers didn't realize the potential of her at first because the whole scene with her in the hospital is kind of an add-on that the writers added for... God, was it episode 4 or 3, Pedro?
What was? Sorry, could you...
The last scene we get with Kate in her hospital.
Oh, episode 4. Episode 4.
Pretty much, yeah. In fact, in episode 5 feels like the writers realized, oh crap, we could have been doing all this amazing stuff with all these characters. Let's do a bit of a hint at that in this bout during the Nightmare chapter. And seriously, where the heck did Kate supposedly hating Max and her psyche come from? Like, again, if there were hints that Kate hated Max for stopping her from jumping, I could get that, but Kate has been nothing but thankful to Max for stopping her from jumping. And yeah, I might as well transition into how plot points can just come and go unless they have to do with Chloe. Which, again, really hurts us getting to know the town as well. And... yeah, a lot of stuff is told to us. Like, Chloe tells us about how, oh, this town is terrible. Most people we see really aren't. She says, oh, the police are in the Prescott's pocket. Yeah, even though we more often than not see the police actually willing to trespass on Prescott territory when they have the proper evidence. Again, remember one of those flashbacks where we see David flanked by Arcadia Bay police? Remember, they're going onto Prescott territory. If they were in the Prescott's pocket, surely even evidence would not have been able to sway them. So, and again, we're told all this stuff. By Chloe, mind you, who is not exactly the most reliable character. So, yeah. A lot of telling and no showing, which was even to Dwibs' chagrin when we got to the bout with Nathan just dying off screen. I was getting a confession from him by phone. And yeah, that's a thing. If Nathan's still a bad person despite his apology, then Chloe is still a bad person despite her supposed change of heart in the end as well.
Yeah.
Let's see. As for the art style, the art style is, fine. I can get what they were going for here and there, but it has a bit of mixed results. Which, I guess, to be fair, they kind of got a better art style for Life is Strange 2.
Well, Life is Strange 2 kind of tries to keep the pinwheel aesthetic, but bumps up the fidelity. It's kind of complicated to explain. We can talk about it in more detail when we actually have those visuals in front of us, so I can describe it more properly.
Regardless, I can appreciate what the art style was trying to do, but the execution still felt lacking in regards.
Yeah, I actually do prefer how Before the Storm looks. I feel like because remember that game had a bigger budget than this one, so the result they were able to refine it basically.
Yeah, again, that's the ironic thing. Before the Storm is technically a worse put together story, but there are several things about it that I still like better than the first Life is Strange.
Let me put it this way. This plot is technically more coherent for the most part. It's technically more coherent, and at the very least, it has a proper resolution. The plot of Before the Storm is less messy and much less irritating or less stressful, as Shira would put it, but it goes nowhere and is so undercooked. It's practically raw, you know.
And in terms of its main purpose being getting the audience to realize why Chloe is the way she is and sympathize with her better, it did not really succeed in swaying public opinion on Chloe.
Not really. It has a better. Sorry, go on.
Speaking of which, might as well finally get to her. Chloe Price. Like, she is pretty much synonymous with the story of this game, because at the end of the day, that is what the story of this game is about. Chloe Price, to the point where her very death is kind of the catalyst for the game's plot. Never mind the fact that it is not really explained in great detail why. I guess we're just supposed to assume that Max using her powers messes with the timeline, but for some reason, the storm that's caused by it doesn't affect the whole world, just the town of Arcadia Bay? Why?
Because God works in mysterious ways, Jova.
And I'm sorry. No, as we'll find out later, it is clear that the developers wanted us to like Chloe. Failure in that regard. Like, okay, here's the thing. Even people who like this game nowadays admit that Chloe is pretty terrible. I'm not going to act like she doesn't still have some fans. However, it does seem like nowadays most people agree that going for the sacrifice Chloe ending feels like the more plausible one. Again, there are probably some people who still do prefer the sacrifice to Arcadia Bay ending, but honestly think, even if Chloe was a choir girl or something, it would still be hard to rationalize sacrificing an entire town just for her, especially if she is asking to be sacrificed.
Remember, Joe, what you're describing right now is the ending of Weathering with You. Because remember, in Weathering with You, Hina was portrayed as a super nice girl who's noble and is willing to sacrifice herself for the greater good. Because remember, she was even saying, "Look, I need to do this, otherwise rain will drown Tokyo and shit." So, yeah, if that didn't work, much less this one.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't even buy that Chloe is suddenly this altruistic. Like, it just comes way the heck out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But Chloe is abrasive. She is mean. She is dirty. She's
a bully, like Shira said.
And she can be very abusive of Max. Like, she does not take into consideration how Max's uses of her powers are causing her to flipping nosebleed right in front of her. She is more than willing to abuse Max's powers to save her own skin here and there when it matters, and isn't even smart enough to say, "Hey, Max, go back in time to stop us from lying on the train tracks," in another bout here. So yeah, she's kind of an idiot quite a bit of a time here and there. The game talks about how great a team Max and Chloe are when, let's be honest, it is Max doing 90% of the work. Now, don't get me wrong. Chloe does give us some useful intel here and there, but even when she's trying to unlock the door for us, she can't do it, so we instead end up having to make a bomb to open it ourselves.
So basically, Chloe's like, she solved the mystery, and I helped.
Yeah. Except even the story tries to go on about how, oh no, you and Chloe are such a great team. Like, no, just no. And man, poor Max, despite being the main character, does not really get much to herself. And you know what? I'm not saying that she had to be. Like, one of my favorite games, Ace Attorney, its main character, Phoenix, arguably, you could say, isn't even the main narrative character in the first game. Some people argue that that is Miles Edgeworth. However, the reason it still works is that Phoenix is still a good enough fleshed out character. He's the kind of character who you can put yourself in the shoes of, especially of how you play literally from his first-person perspective during scenes not in the courtroom trials. However, he still has enough of a character so that he is not some complete blank slate you see in a lot of isekai anime.
The point of the as attorney protagonist, as stated by Takumi himself, is that they're the straight men in a world full of over-the-top characters. That's kind of the whole, which is
exactly. So, like, yes, there are arguably characters more extravagant and richer. Well, okay, maybe not richer than Phoenix, but you get what I mean. Like, well, there are characters definitely more extravagant than Phoenix, but that's more so because Phoenix is the straight man to them all, as opposed to him feeling like a blank slate. Max? Not so much. Like, right down to the overall tone in which she monologues, she is dull.
Yeah.
Her main character trait seems to be obsessed with Chloe. And maybe she will help other people out. But again, for as terrible as Nathan is, mind you, he and Chloe are kind of on similar tiers of bad. Granted, he's probably still worse. For all Max talks about helping Chloe, and as much as she acknowledges that Nathan needs help, she never seems to really try to get him the help that he needs. And I get it, some things might be outside of her power, but with all her time-traveling powers, she doesn't, try. And it's not like he would be the only other case where she has helped people. Remember, even if it's a side comedy thing, she does use her powers to help people like Alyssa, to the point where, again, that ends up paying off heavily in the final chapter. So, like, why so inconsistent? And again, we know the real reason, because if she did try and help Nathan, then the plot with Mr. Jefferson wouldn't happen, because Jefferson is using Nathan as his own personal leech and lapdog. But again, how much more interesting would it have been if we could get about where we helped Nathan, and that ends up messing up with Jefferson's plans? And to be fair, maybe they wanted to do all these different bouts and routes, but due to their limited budget. Well, I'm sorry, but the actual route that they chose to go with is boring. Because, honestly, when Chloe's not being all the terrible things that she is, she's a boring character. She's not really fun. She's not funny. Like, aside from being an absolute massive heel, what is there to Chloe to be interested in as a character?
Stupid use of slang. Hella, let's talk business.
Stupid enough to literally get herself
shot. Come on.
And she's a hypocrite, like, about gun control. Oh, it's okay if I'm the one controlling the gun. And then she literally shoots herself. Like, great job, Chloe.
Yeah.
Like, that's a thing. Aside from her negative qualities, she's boring as a character. Like, Now, if they showed off her slang as being a verbal tick or whatnot, that would be fair. But no, she clearly does not always speak like that. She's clearly just sounding it to be cool. Again, we literally hear her first line be, "Let's do business, yo." Along the lines of that. It's just... it really does feel like the writers were trying to get on the level with the kids. And mind you, back in 2015... maybe that worked because some people talk like that. But even still, though, at the end of the day, even if that was how people talk back then, it just makes the game feel incredibly dated now.
Yeah, you should never do that kind of stuff. You should when you're trying to do something like this, you should never directly use slang that's of the time, because that's going to date your game in a few years. That's why games
unless you're like some... Now, granted, I do understand that stuff from the 90s and 80s are kind of like that because, the 90s and 80s have their certain mark here and there. I think the issue with this is that, unlike, say, something from the 90s or 80s, this doesn't even feel like it has that nice returning factor of the certain decade of its time because, honestly, that sort of slang and lingo, if it were a thing, probably didn't last more than a year, honestly. Now, something that's decade-wide, I can get that. But, only year-wide, it's like with Shark Tale, where that is the movie made specifically for the year it came out, and it shows.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, with Chloe being as unremarkable and unlikable as she is, the game really has the nerve to give us that final choice. Sacrifice Chloe or sacrifice Arcadia Bay. And, yeah. No, just no. It is not a tough decision to make.
No.
Unless you really somehow liked Chloe. Now look.
Fun fact.
I am not...
Sorry.
Yeah.
Fun fact. I actually streamed the game for a friend of mine who's also from SSMB, Dan J. 80. I think his number is 86.
Dan J86.
That's it. Basically, I streamed this entire game for him, and every time there was a choice, I would ask him what to do, because just so he could participate, right? And when we got to the sacrifice Chloe, sacrifice Arcadia Bay choice, I asked him. I swear, you can ask him. Okay, then choose, as if I didn't already know what you're going to choose. And he said, "Yeah, goodbye, Chloe," because he didn't like Chloe either. Guess what?
Yeah. So, yeah, no, like, and again, nowadays, most people say that they would take the sacrifice Chloe about here. Like, okay, look. Like I said, it's tough enough if she were a good character, but she isn't. Like, she's meant to be someone we like, but she's incredibly unlikable, and the game doesn't acknowledge it. And like a lot of things, Chloe is actually kind of ironically close to being a good character, if she were the antagonist. Chloe is not necessarily an unrealistic character. There are people like Chloe. However, the point is that those people are usually scum or absolutely need help. Now, I get that as a friend it can be tough to have to turn your back on her if she's not willing to get the help that she needs. But holy cow, no, Chloe is a terrible influence on Max. If the game used it to its advantage and played Chloe up like the antagonist that she clearly is, this would have actually been brilliant.
Yeah, yeah, of course. If the game was an actual exploration of what it's like to be in a toxic relationship, then yeah, maybe they might have had something here. But that's not what the game is going for. So
yeah, sadly. So yeah, that's Life is Strange at the end of the day.
You know what's sad, Jova? What you just said about Chloe in terms of she comes across as an antagonist more than anything, even though we're supposed to care for her. That's how a lot of people describe Daniel in Life is Strange 2. So
and apparently there's some other
and trust me,
people don't agree with being likable in that game too.
Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself when I say this, but let me put it this way, Jova. For as terrible as Chloe is, she doesn't physically harm Max. That's all I'll say for now.
Oh boy. It's okay, Pedro. How about your final thoughts?
What can I say? Okay, the side characters are far more endearing than the leads. That's a problem. Max is whatever. Just such a. I don't think she's funny. Her commentary is not funny. Like, she doesn't really do the same thing that Phoenix would normally do, like Jova said. Chloe is terrible for all the reasons I've already ranted on part 12. The graphics look nice. I do enjoy the Pinterest aesthetic, but yeah, that is true that the execution also can be a bit flawed. Though, yeah, I do still prefer the way the. I mean, even though the remaster has things that look better, the original game is more consistent, I will argue, because like she already said, the visuals, the mixed bag nature of the visuals in the remaster makes the game look inconsistent, you know. So that's kind of a problem because it kind of takes you out of it. The music, I don't really find the music all that. I actually prefer the music of Before the Storm, actually. For Before the Storm, since Before the Storm you play as Chloe, they went for more rock music, and that's just not. They hired two band members of a band called Daughter, as we'll see in the behind the scenes stuff, and it works pretty well. I do enjoy the music in Before the Storm better than this, although I do understand why this appeals to people, and it has that whole guitar acoustic indie hipster thing going for it. So I understand what the appeal is. It's just that it's not for me. What else? this game and its stupid film. First of all, that stupid nightmare sequence. Get rid of that. Seriously, if I was presented a bloody script for episode 5, the first thing I would throw out is the whole nightmare sequence, because from a storytelling standpoint, it does nothing. It's just, aside from the whole trying to manipulate you into liking Chloe thing, like Jova said, story-wise, it's just random shit happening for the sake of random shit happening, and it does nothing, and it's just grinds the story to a fucking halt.
I really do wonder if they put that thing there just for padding. Like, they were afraid that the chapter would be too short and not worth its money without that.
And speaking of padding, like I said before, what was up with that stupid alternate timeline detour with paraplegic Chloe? Again, nothing was accomplished in that aside from more cheap emotional manipulation. Seriously.
Again, like I mentioned, missed opportunity to give us a route where we actually stay in that timeline and try and make things better. Granted, I guess given what the end game ends up being anyway, that would have been just as pointless too. But God, that timeline already seemed more interesting than the old timeline.
So the basic point is, the game is terrible. Why? For reasons. One, first of all, the writing is garbage. Like, the dialogue is unnatural. The characterization of the main characters is flawed, to say the least. The narrative loses sight of its own ass by the time we get to episode 5, where it just starts spitballing and shit. And yes, I know that there might be some. You can make an argument about certain bits of how to explain certain time travel aspects in episode 5, but like I said, the game. Again, the fact that we have to come up with an explanation for all this crap is the problem, okay? Like, we shouldn't have to play the writer, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a problem. I hate the ending because, like I said, yeah, like she always said, you can make an argument that, oh, does you see, maybe Max went back and redid all those friendships. Like, well, that's a nice thought, but how do we even know that that's what the writers intended? Because the game never makes that clear. I mean, for all I know, maybe Max just went on and never actually met Dana or Taylor or Alyssa. So,
again, for all intents and purposes, from what you can actually see in game, your choices ultimately do not matter.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, they don't. Maybe it's a nice thought to theorize that they do, but it's nothing more than a theory. So, sorry.
Again, they can't even give you the satisfaction of getting an actual Max and Warren relationship if that's what you were trying for.
Yeah, that's a point. If you're trying to go for the Warren ship, well, sucks to be you, because if you pick sacrifice Arcadia Bay, Warren gets killed, and if you choose sacrifice Chloe, the relationship is undone.
And Max still kisses Chloe, even if you weren't going for the Chloe relationship with the sacrifice Chloe ending.
Well, actually, no. I can, because trust me, this is now my 4th time playing the game. The kiss in the sacrifice Chloe ending only happens if you've been favoring her in the major choices. If you go constantly against Chloe, they will only hug. They will not. So the kiss, to be fair, is a consequence of choices. So.
I must have misremembered. Granted, I don't play this game often. I was so certain. Well, granted, like you mentioned, you don't have to go with every single thing Chloe wants.
No.
So maybe it was just about where I went enough with it to the point where I was able to kiss both Warren and Chloe in that regard.
You can miss maybe one, maybe again. There's no relationship meter for me to check, so.
Yeah, and to be fair, like we did mention, it is possible to kiss both Warren and Chloe in that regard.
It is, but
I do think the issue is it feels like the game is always leaning towards Chloe and Max being the canon relationship.
Well, of course it is. Both endings undo whatever Warren shipping you might be trying to do. So yeah,
pretty much. Yeah, like again, even if you go with the sacrifice Chloe ending, Max and Warren are just friends.
Well, as far as we can tell, we see them in the funeral, but they don't even talk to each other. So, I mean, we don't even know. That's the thing. We don't know. But again, it's all speculation. And I'm not really willing to give this game credit because the game didn't really do anything to deserve me giving it some credit. So, or benefit of the doubt. So, yeah. shit game. So yeah, not. But don't be. But we're not quite done yet, everybody, because as free DLC, we have the development commentary, which is basically a fancy term for behind-the-scenes videos. So tune in for those, because I actually do think this is some interesting things in that game, actually. So we'll take a look at those.
Oh wait, hold on. Before you end,
Go on.
the reason that I do pretty much assume that Max and Warren just end up staying as friends, it's because that at the end of her journal, over the recap of the Sacrifice Chloe ending, it sort of leads you to believe that they're just gonna be friends.
Well, whatever. I just at this point I've just grown beyond caring. So,
Yeah.
see you for the next part, everybody.
See ya.